Hello, I'm Bridget McKenzie. I'm a director of the new Climate Museum UK, and I'm also a cultural learning and heritage researcher and evaluator. I'm going to talk about what kinds of leadership museums and cultural organisations need in a time of climate and ecological emergency, which I'll call the Earth Crisis for short. I'm arguing for a new ethics of leadership and new concepts of the purpose of culture, which draw on feminism and ecological ways of being. These can help create the conditions for organisations and communities to face the full register of challenges of the Earth crisis. In general terms, not just for museums, these challenges require much more than technical capacities, but more about building resilience or being anti-fragile, growing compassion, and changing our cultures from extractivism to ecocentric. I believe that feminism and planet care go hand in hand, and when I talk about feminism, I'm not just talking about women, but a set of attitudes and capacities that can be lived and practiced by anybody. But I do have two female heroines. One is Wangari Maathai, who was the leader or founder of the Green Belt tree planting movement. The second is Polly Higgins, who founded the campaign for an ecocide law. Both have passed away, so this talk really is in their honour. This graphic, which you can find on the Show Your Stripes website, created by Ed Hawkins, shows the global temperature rise over the past 170 years. This encapsulates the Earth crisis in one particular dimension, which is climate change. You can see on the right-hand side, temperatures are consistently now warm, represented by red, and we're moving into a completely different state, which is not conducive to biodiverse life or human civilization. And you can also see that temperatures started to change 60 or so years ago, so the Earth crisis began some time ago. But it isn't just about climate, it's an ecological emergency, and the root cause is extraction and ecocide. They're causing biodiversity collapse, climate breakdown, and human health pandemics, and each one ramps up the impacts of the other, and underpinning all of this is gross inequality. So what's the role of culture and museums when our house is on fire? Museums are used to caring, they care for collections, but we have to rethink the idea of caring for culture, for posterity, as the key purpose, especially when posterity itself is threatened. So we have to shift to caring for people, places and planet, not just collections of things. That means that we have to think about stopping the causes of the crisis directly, alerting people to danger, creating a safer world and caring for those affected, and even overhauling the whole system. So that goes very much beyond the normal definition of what museums are for. But this challenge excited me, so I decided in 2018 to try creating a museum that could model this much wider activist role. So we're anticipating and imagining what will happen in the future, helping to make concrete the solutions to show people what they can do, and really modelling care and compassion. We don't have a single building, we're mobile, we're feral, and we're also digital. So this slide shows one of our exhibitions where we travelled to Brighton, to the Onca Gallery. We take our collections to pop up in different kinds of space in the community. We run talks and training and workshops using some of our collections. We can do bespoke creative commissions and projects, quite a lot of digital projects for the time being. We try to balance the emotional, the intellectual and the activist, so our activities take people through a journey of feeling, thinking and doing. When helping people take action, we're informed by thinking that people have the best sense of well-being in the face of the earth crisis if they can carry out prefigurative strategies. That means prefiguring or imagining how the world can be greener, more regenerative, and then being able to actually take action towards building that vision for a better future. Climate Museum UK sees itself as a kind of vessel, a sort of open organisation that is navigating and responding to the current crisis. So this image is like a boat, but it's also like a watchful eye. So it's heading towards the future, we all are, inexorably, but we keep spiralling back to look at the past. We don't just take environmental action inside, within our organisation, we're also working outside with other museums and wider communities. In working on the inside, on ourselves and as an organisation, we are looking to shift values, and working outside with communities and systems, we're looking to change those systems. In looking to the past, we're thinking about remembering and making reparations. In looking to the future, the most important, we're being positopian, and I'll explain what that means. Positopian is my invented word. It means not being stuck in utopian or dystopian positions. Both are impossible positions and people become polarised. But positopian means to braid together the most realistic and worst case future scenarios with those that are preferable and desirable in order to create possible futures. So you might have seen her donut before, it's the shape on the right. In Climate Museum we try to put culture in that donut, so we're working with partners to show how they, in their particular field of culture, can contribute to this safe and just space for humanity. Promoted and written about donut economics. She's a perfect example of someone who creates a possible space for people to thrive between the limits of the planet and the needs of society. The second theme is system changing, and the model I want to share with you is Dr. Kristen Alford, who is a futurist and director of the Museum of Design at the University of South Australia. So she works on programmes that are designed to inspire young adults at the intersection of science, art and innovation, and young people are really given agency to think big and change systems. So in Climate Museum UK, we try to show that the shift from consumer to citizen can be very favourable to the environment, but what we really need to do is to develop capacities for people to change systems. For example, by restoring or rewilding nature, by being an eco-entrepreneur, creating new kinds of economy, and collaborating across disciplines. The third example I want to give is Esme Ward, who's the director of Manchester Museum, and she does work which is really about shifting values within and beyond the museum, and she leads work that is really about care, about making reparations to communities, and really having well-being at the heart. And this is a framework that Manchester Museum and others who are part of the Happy Museum network use to inspire their work on values. It has been devised by the Common Cause Foundation, and they offer resources and training in working with people's underlying mental frames to shift them towards more beneficial behaviours, fostering intrinsic values such as self-acceptance, care for others, and concern for the natural world. So the fourth theme I wanted to mention is about making reparations. And this is a very complicated process, and it really begins with acknowledging that it's important to grieve for loss, important to apologise, important to build relationships with people who have been treated unjustly, both historically and in the present day. And we would also argue that we can't just make reparations to human communities, but we also have to think ecologically about other species. And by doing so, we also think in a caring way towards indigenous communities who are very nature connected and dependent on healthy ecosystems. So for museums to lead work that is about grief and reparation, they need to explore and promote care for all beings beyond humans and beyond humans like your own kind. And just as an example, in the image is the curator, Rian Rosen, who is at Bristol Museum, and they did a project last year where they worked with school children and put funeral shrouds over extinct or endangered species. In the Climate Museum UK, we have been involved in playing a very active role in annual remembrance days for lost species. These happen in November each year. They're a chance to explore the stories of extinct and critically endangered species, cultures, lifeways and ecological communities. And we are intending to do activities this year that will be really focusing on resisting racism and looking at the connections between racism and ecological destruction. I just want to conclude by looking at the model that we use for defining Climate Museum as a vessel that is watching and responding to the crisis. So just to point out that the central circle is inspired by the indigenous American medicine wheel, where the mental dimension corresponds to north. So there's mental, physical, emotional and spiritual. So we try to make sure that our activities cover feeling, thinking and doing. And as a part of that, the spiritual runs all the way through. And this is spiritual in the broadest sense, which is really about honouring our earth and our ancestors, connecting to all beings, and as I've explained, about supporting people's grief and their dark, difficult feelings. And then moving on to developing emotional capacities for coping with change without falling into conflict with each other. So it's important to practice compassion, often to relinquish and forgive, to give up, and also to learn resilience, to be anti-fragile. It's important for museums to actually practice and model what regenerative living and working looks like, to contribute as much as they can within the organisation and outside with public engagement to mitigating climate change and limiting the risks of pandemics and disasters that arise from the wider Earth crisis. Of course, museums are about culture, so making and stewarding art and culture is a vital part of what they do, but this has to be geared towards changing systems and also looking backwards a little more to the past. Museums have an important role in educating and remembering, capturing knowledge as it's being lost. But this can also be about really promoting the very best ways of living and multi-solving problems. So I want to just conclude by suggesting that this could be a framework for leadership that draws on the best of feminist leadership, ecological leadership, the example of earth teachers from indigenous cultures, and also perhaps the best of what young people and young activists are showing us in their leadership now against harmful and iniquitous systems. So thank you very much for listening, and if you'd like to get in touch with Climate Museum, you can see our contact details here, Climate Museum UK. Thank you.